CNS.
Last topic we completed.
CNS.
Volume 1, this is. Parts of the brain, function of the brain we had discussed the other day. Function of the brain we are done. We are to start with reflex action and the hormones. Take out your volume, turn to page 209. Take out your volume, turn to page 209. Let us try answering at least 5-6 questions what we had studied the other day. Then we are going to proceed. The first is, keep taking those questions as we answer. Number 2, page 209, question number 2, review questions. Can you see there? 209, review questions. The first one, what are receptors? Write down that. All of you take out your notebook. What are receptors? Write that question. What are receptors?
Question बाकी
कौन सा?
define reflex, what are the components of reflex?
अच्छा वो बाकी है.
वो last में आपने question.
अच्छा ठीक है. तो receptor के पहले वो complete करते हैं. I'm going to start with that topic. What is the definition of reflex that you should write? We are going to start with that topic today. देखो पहले फिर definition को पहले complete कर लो. Then we will go through some questions here. What is reflex? Write down. The involuntary, comma, sudden and immediate response. Involuntary, sudden and immediate response to any stimulus. The involuntary, sudden and immediate response to any stimulus controlled by the spinal cord is known as reflex. Is known as reflex action. Completely. Is known as reflex action. Next paragraph. The five components is known as reflex action.
तो जो डॉक्टर
reflex है. That's an example of a reflex.
मैंने खुद के साथ पहले ऐसा नहीं करता
क्योंकि वो डॉक्टर एक पार्टिकुलर एंगल में मारते हैं. तुमने कहीं भी मारा होगा. So now, when we are talking about the concept of a reflex, we are going to understand this. This is a basic concept to understand reflexes and what is the concept, what is the process happening here. Which part is this? We are talking about the spinal cord. The last day, we had studied about the brain and the spinal cord. This spinal cord, what does it contain? It's an arrangement of nerves from way to way, from the base of the head till the hip region, the entire long arrangement of nerves that we talk about, protected by the vertebral column. That is the spinal cord that we understand. But अगर एक particular vertebral bone का section अगर लिया जाए, then this is how it will appear. This particular region is the arrangement of the nerves. But there are nerves which are entering the spinal cord. There are nerves which are coming out from the spinal cord. This is a small region of the spinal cord. Nerves are entering, nerves are coming out. Nerves are entering, nerves are coming out. So now here, as we write the components, what are the components of a reflex action. What are the components here? We understand. So I was talking about that question. Receptor. What is the meaning of the word receptor? A part of the body which is capable of receiving a stimulus. So which are the parts of the body the last day we discussed? Eyes, the skin, the nose, then the ear. All these are the receptors of our body because in different form they are able to receive information. I talk about the eyes, light. Talk about the ear, sound waves. Talk about the skin, heat, cold. Talk about the nose, smell. So whenever we are talking about all these parts of the body which is able to receive any type of a stimulus, receptor. But this receptor, the moment you are touching something hot, the moment you are touching something pricky, now every time we are not only talking about touching something hot or touching something cold, you are walking, and in the process of walking, what's happening? You step on something pricky. You are walking. In the process of walking, you step on something pricky. What happens? You withdraw your feet. So now that we are talking about that we had stepped on something pricky, which part of the body is acting as a receptor? The skin. And from that part of the skin, a set of neurons have immediately carried message to the spinal cord. So which neuron are we talking about? Which set of nerves, which set of neurons have carried message to the spinal cord? Those set of neurons are known as the sensory neuron. So those set of neurons are known as a sensory neuron. If you see from here the sensory neuron, from here the sensory, this entire long neuron which is entering the spinal cord. So this purple colored neuron, that is what is shown in this figure as the sensory neuron. So what is the job of a sensory neuron every time? Carry message from a receptor to the spinal cord. Now inside the spinal cord, the processing of the message. If it is any other function, like that now I am talking here also, there is a programming constantly going on in my brain that I have to speak this, I have to speak this. When you are writing an exam, you are constantly programmed. But if it is a reflex, I am walking and I step on something sharp and pricky, at that time, hardly there is any programming, immediately I jump back. So at that time, what's happening? The spinal cord immediately decides what to do. The spinal cord is not sending the messages to the brain at that time. But now that I talk, now that I play something, now that I write something, every time the spinal cord is sending messages to the brain for a correction. And then the brain gives commands to the body. So that's why we say CNS, the central nervous system, where the brain and the spinal cord work together. In case of a reflex, it is only the spinal cord which works, no brain. So now we step on something pricky, we touch something very sharp, we touch something very hot. What's happening? The spinal cord got the message and immediately the spinal cord is sending the command to the part of the body. In this example, what is shown? The green set of neurons. Can you see the green set of neurons and sending the messages back from the spinal cord to the part of the body, and the muscles are contracting and the hands are withdrawn. The muscles of the feet contracting and I'm withdrawing my feet back. So if these are the conditions, then this is what we are talking. So what are the components? First of all, the receptor, the sensory neuron, the spinal cord, the motor neuron, and the part of the body which is showing the response. That is known as the effector. So before you write, when we are talking about a concept of reflex, when we talk about a concept of reflex, there is always two conditions. What is it? Number one, there has to be a stimulus. Which part of the body will receive the stimulus? Part of the body which will receive the stimulus are always known as receptors. There are different types of receptors. So if you have to talk about what are the different types of receptors, receptors are of different types. I talk about the mechanoreceptors. All these words you'll have to remember. We talk about the mechanoreceptors. Which part of the body is considered as the mechanoreceptor? Mechanoreceptor is the skin. Next what? We talk about the olfactory receptors. Olfactory receptors are which ones? The nose. We talk about the photoreceptors. Photoreceptors are which ones? The eyes. the photoreceptors. We talk about the gustatory receptor. Gustatory receptors are the tongue for the taste of the chemicals. So we talk about the gustatory receptors and we talk about the auditory receptors. So auditory receptors would be the ears. So now when we are talking about receptors, we are going to answer that question later. What are receptors? Specialized group of tissues which can sense, receive stimulus. And stimulus can be what different forms, in the form of a chemical, in the form of a touch pressure prick, in the form of sound, in the form of light. So these are the different forms of information that our body parts, our sense organs can receive. So we are talking about stimulus. Now if there is a stimulus, for every stimulus there has to be a action, reaction. So for every stimulus there has to be a reaction. What is that word called? That word is always called response. For every stimulus there has to be a response. Part of the body which carries out the response or shows the reaction, that part of the body is known as a effector. Receptor is to always stimulus and effector is to always response. Now I said, I've been talking about this example for a while now. I said what? I am walking, I prick on something sharp and I withdraw my hand and I withdraw my leg. I am walking, I step on something pricky, sharp, withdraw my leg. Which part of the body is acting as a receptor?
Leg.
The skin of the foot. Which part of the body is acting as a effector? Huh? Which part of the body is acting as an effector?
Foot muscles.
The muscles of the foot. The muscles of the calf. So the muscles of the foot are contracting immediately and I'm able to withdraw my feet. I'm able to withdraw my leg. Say suppose now that you are walking on the road. You're walking on the road and you see one of your friends at a distance waving at you. You're walking on the road and you see a friend at a distance waving at you. What do? You also wave back. Which part of the body acting as a receptor?
Eyes.
Eyes. Which part of the body acting as a effector? The hand. So that is clearly understood. At times, in this example, which is the receptor? In this example, which is the receptor? The fingertips. Which is the effector? The hand muscles. So quite a number of times, the receptor and the effector will be nearby. Receptor and the effector nearby. Quite a number of times, receptor and the effector will be far away. They will be far away. So, but then, whatever the example is, receptors are always meant for receiving information. Effectors are always meant for showing response. But between this receptor and effector, all these components are there. Between the receptor and effector, all these components. Which are the components between the receptor and the effector? If I have to talk about a reflex action, what is the pathway? For a reflex action, this pathway is known as the reflex arc. So now let me talk about the components. I will start with the receptor. I start with the receptor. Receptor can be certain parts of the body which are constantly receiving information. I told you already. This receptor now will be carrying the messages. So I will say that this particular receptor now carries the message. So the components to understand the receptor would be now gathering the stimulus. This stimulus will be now passed on by a type of a neuron, and what are these neurons known as? The sensory neurons. What are these sensory neurons? The sensory neurons are the type of neurons which always carry messages from the receptor to the spinal cord. So from the receptor, the stimulus is being carried by the sensory neurons way to the spinal cord. I am only talking about the concept of a reflex. So when I say reflex, I have to only write spinal cord. Apart from reflex, any regular activity I have to mention, I have to describe. then I'll have to write the CNS. Then I will write brain and spinal cord both. But right now I'm only talking about reflexes, so I will not write CNS because if it is a reflex, the thinking process of the brain is not there. We will learn exactly some few more examples. So now the spinal cord receiving the message. From the spinal cord, now next what? The other type of neurons. What are the other type of neurons? The motor neurons. Motor neurons giving what? Commands. The motor neurons will carry, when we are talking about the stimulus, the motor neurons will carry the commands. The motor neurons will give the commands to the effectors. And the effectors will show the response. So if this is the entire pathway we are talking about, what is this entire pathway known as? This entire pathway is known as the reflex arc. This entire pathway is known, both of you will be out of the class now. मैं तुम दोनों को फेंक दूंगी क्लास से, आया समझ में? When I talk in this language, meaning I will do it now. Some of you are really becoming annoying in my eyes. And now that we are almost in the middle of the syllabus and we are hurrying up, I have really no time for all this nonsense. Please take a look. Now, when we are talking about this, what I said, if it is a concept of reflex arc, what is reflex arc? How will you define? Reflex action is the method or the process. Reflex action is process. Then what is reflex arc? It is the entire pathway which carries out reflex action. So reflex action we have defined just now that it is a involuntary response, quick response. Why do we say quick? It does not give us any time for preparing. Immediately we do it. So reflexes, whenever we are talking about reflexes, here's quite a number of times we must have come across the same reflex. Whenever there's an irritant, we sneeze. Immediately we sneeze. But can we sneeze in a very polished way? We may have thought. Just now there was irritant in my throat and I coughed it out. That is again a reflex. We sneeze, we cough. Or now that I gave you certain examples, you touch something and withdraw. Prick on, step on something and withdraw. Quite a number of times, if we try, are we able to make those movements very planned and very polished? No, almost not. But otherwise, if I talk about the way we sit and walk, are we able to make it a little bit polished with our passing time, with our passing months and years? Yes, we can, because that is not a reflex. The way we talk, the way we stand, the way we write, are these reflexes? No, these are not reflexes. So the definition of reflex action we already wrote. The next paragraph you are supposed to write out the components. So let us write down. The components are 5 components. The components are number 1. The components are number 1, receptor. Stimulus we don't write because that is not a component. Receptor, sensory neuron, spinal cord, motor neuron, effector. Receptor, next paragraph. The components are no, response is an action. It is a reaction, so that's not a component. Like stimulus, it is something received. That's not a component. Receptor, sensory neuron, spinal cord, motor neuron, effector. Write down the definition of reflex arc now. So these are the 5 components of reflex action. Some examples of reflex action just now we discussed. Now we try understanding what is reflex arc. I have been repeatedly telling you that, say suppose you are talking to somebody. You are talking to somebody. When you are talking to somebody, yes, you have seen that person. You have gathered some information. Your sensory neurons are carrying messages to the spinal cord. The spinal cord is giving the message to the brain. The brain is giving commands back to the spinal cord that this is your friend, you can share only this much. This is your mother, you cannot say these things to your mother. The brain constantly gives you commands back. But when it is a reflex, we are not able to plan, program that. Try to understand what is the difference between any other activity and reflex action. So when it is a regular activity, yes, receptor is there, stimulus is there, sensory neuron is there, spinal cord gives command to the brain, correction is done and gives back the message back to the spinal cord, then the motor, then the effector, then the response. In that case, the response is quite programmed. In case of reflex action, since this part is not there, the thinking process of the brain is not there, the program is, the entire response is not programmed. Okay. What is the definition of reflex arc? Let us write down. Reflex arc, how to define? Reflex arc, how to define? The shortest pathway, reflex arc, it is the shortest pathway of nerve impulse transmission. It is the shortest pathway of nerve impulse transmission in which the thinking process of the brain is not involved. Thinking process of the brain is not involved, and it involves the following pathway. Why is it known as a reflex arc? Because the pathway always go like this. Write down this pathway along with the answer also, the same thing, but in the form of an arc it has to be written. Receptor, stimulus, sensory neuron, the spinal cord. From the spinal cord comes the motor neuron, and the motor neuron will give rise to the effector, and the effector will show the response. So this entire pathway has to be written in this way. So we start from the receptor, end up with the response. So this is the entire concept of reflex arc. For 2 marks, when you get this question, to write down the definition and show this in this particular form. What is the difference between now the sensory and the motor neuron? That's a common question in your paper. What is the difference between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron? The sensory neuron will send messages from the receptor towards the spinal cord. Motor neuron carries commands from the spinal cord towards the effector. So that's the difference always you are supposed to write. Difference between sensory neuron and motor neuron. Now the reflex action, if you see one figure is there in your textbook as well as in your volume also. There's a figure given. This is one of the simplest, most common example given for reflex action. But what are the different types of reflexes? If we are talking about the types of reflex little bit, remember certain, again, the concept comes, majority of the reflexes are known as unconditional reflexes. Why the reflexes are known as unconditional? Why are they known as natural reflexes? What are some common examples? We had been always talking about the touching of the hot and the cold. Apart from that, what are the other common examples of reflexes? Blinking of the eyelids, sneezing. We talk about sneezing is involuntary. Blinking of the eyelids. That's the reason. Blinking of the eyelids with reference to an irritant. That is always a reflex. You cannot control it. You cannot stop it. So when we are talking about reflexes, what are some common examples? Immediate response that you show, for example, lightning, and then you are blinking. There's a strong flash of light and you are blinking your eyelids. There's an irritant in the throat and you are sneezing and coughing. All these are examples of reflexes. Okay. Difference between the concept of sensory and motor neuron also has to be understood. Now let us go back to that question before we start with the concept of hormones. Now let us go back to this question. What are receptors? What are receptors? Here already I have given you the types of receptors, but what are you supposed to write as a definition? Write down what are receptors and effectors. Let us take it together. What are receptors and effectors? Differentiate between receptors and effectors, right? Specific regions of the body. Specific regions of the body which can receive stimulus are known as receptors. Regions of the body that can receive stimulus are known as receptors. Write any two examples from here. Any two.
Known as
Excuse me, huh? Any two you write. Mechanoreceptors or olfactory receptors, photoreceptors, any two you write. Example. Then we go to effectors.
on mechanoreceptor.
Skin. Skin is known as mechanoreceptor. Skin is known as mechanoreceptor. Why the word mechano? Because skin is always helping in mechanical support. Protection, mechanical support. You can write any two examples. Okay, go to the next paragraph. Part of the body that shows the response. Part of the body that shows the response are known as part of the body that shows response are known as effectors. For example, effectors, for example, okay, muscle or a gland. Part of the body that shows response are known as effectors. For example, muscle or a gland. Full stop. On receiving the stimulus, glands secrete chemical substances. On receiving stimulus, how would a gland behave? On receiving stimulus, gland secrete chemical substances? No, same explanation. Glands secrete chemical substances. On receiving a stimulus, glands secrete chemical substances and muscles contract and show movement. Muscles contract and show movement. Clear, right? So for the concept of reflex action, these words you should be clear with. What is an effector? What is a receptor? What is the job of an effector? What is the job of a receptor? Sensory neuron क्या है? Motor neuron क्या है? Etc. Now the next part of the chapter is about hormones. Let us study the endocrine glands. In this chapter, control coordination, the first part is all about neurons. The first part is all about nervous system. This part is very common to get in your paper as questions. Reflex action, reflex R, pathway likhna, that is very common. One mark के questions आते हैं from this part. Now the next concept that we study will be hormones. Does anyone know what are hormones? Did you ever come across this word, hormones?
Yes.
What is it? And what did you come across? Can you give me any example? पता है? अच्छा, glands क्या है? What is a gland? Can you tell me an example of a gland? Now that part you have studied. Life process में gland पढ़ा है ना? Salivary gland. Salivary gland. Let us take that example. Salivary gland. Now, if I talk about the salivary glands, where are they present? In and around the mouth. I talk about the salivary glands here, or here, or here. The salivary glands are a set of glands, but this set of glands, they have got some tubular structures, and with the help of those tubular structures, the secretion will be drained. So I would understand that if this is a salivary gland, this salivary gland will definitely have some tubes. What are these tubes known as? These tubes are known as ducts. What are their secretions known as? Mostly, if I am talking about the secretions that they are producing, what are their secretions known as? Enzymes. What are their secretions known as? Enzymes. What am I talking about? I took the example of a salivary gland itself. I took the example of a salivary gland. So I'm saying that if this is the salivary gland will always have some ducts and tubes to drop their secretions into the specific region of the body. So now that they drop this, what happened? Huh? Is that funny? Is that funny enough? So now when we are talking about this particular glands will have a set of cells. This set of cells will produce some chemical substances. What are those chemical substances known as? Enzymes. But these chemical substances known as enzymes are always carried by tubes. What are those tubes known as? Ducts. Function of enzymes, quite a number of enzymes we have studied. So function of enzymes क्या है? They would always break down complex substances to simpler forms. एक example बता. One function of an enzyme, so many you have studied. याद है एक आध? Function of an enzyme. एक enzyme and its specific function. Amylase breaking down starch to maltose. Amylase, salivary amylase breaking down starch to maltose. So yes, we are talking about enzymes. But now, these chemical substances which are carried by ducts, can they be carried long distances? Did you ever study that the salivary amylase can show its function in the stomach? In the intestine? No, we never studied that. We always studied if it is a salivary amylase, it will show its function in the mouth cavity itself. If it is the pancreatic group of cells releasing enzymes, it will show its function near the pancreas itself. Did we ever come across that an enzyme is carried long distances to show its function? Never. So now, this type of glands which are having ducts carry secretions only short distances and show their function nearby wherever the gland is. This type of glands are actually known as the exocrine glands. Then in contrast, what is the other type of gland that we have to understand in detail? The other type of glands are endocrine glands. And what are some special features of these endocrine glands? One major feature of the endocrine gland is the endocrine gland is always very close to the bloodstream. So I would say that these endocrine glands, where are they always located? Or what is one special feature of these endocrine glands? Endocrine glands will always have large number of blood supply surrounding them, large number of blood supply. So I may talk about an endocrine gland. This endocrine gland also has got, this gland has some group of cells. This group of cells are producing some chemical substances, But then these chemical substances are not carried by ducts at all. These chemical substances are just getting diffused from one region to the other. So from way to way, from the gland, wherever the chemical substances are getting produced, from here directly poured into the bloodstream. What are these chemical substances now to be termed as? These chemical substances are to be termed as hormones. So what am I saying? If this is a gland which is directly dropping or pouring its secretion directly into the bloodstream, not carrying its secretion by the way of tubes, then definitely this is a type of a gland, a specialized type of a gland. And what are these glands known as? These glands are known as endocrine glands. Also known as, I said they don't have any ducts, also known as ductless glands. Why the word ductless? Because they don't have any ducts. They don't have any ducts. So that's the reason the word ductless. So what are some features now? If it is an endocrine gland, it will always produce chemical substances. What are those chemical substances known as? Hormones. If it is an endocrine gland, the endocrine gland always has rich supply of blood vessels surrounding it, because it needs to pour the secretion directly into the blood. Okay, so this is the first two things to remember. So this is how I first of all start differentiating the endocrine and the exocrine. What are some other examples? Salivary gland is there. The pancreas is there, a very good example you should always remember. Pancreas and exocrine gland. But the other side also we are going to study pancreas is a endocrine gland also. So the example of the pancreas is very, very important for your syllabus also. So I said the first thing is, if it is an endocrine gland, they will be producing chemical substances known as hormones. Second, if it is an endocrine gland, they always pour their secretions directly into the blood. So if they pour the secretions directly into the blood, the blood will carry the hormones long distances. The blood can carry the hormone long distances, unlike the enzymes. What did we come across? Enzymes cannot go long distances because short tubes pouring the secretion in one part of the body, and they're only the function. So here, if it is an endocrine gland producing hormones, pouring the secretion into the bloodstream, they can travel long distances. Let me just give you an example. Insulin. So if I talk about one particular endocrine gland, just try to understand how long they can travel. I talk about an endocrine gland known as the pituitary gland. We will learn that. One endocrine gland known as the pituitary gland. Where is the pituitary gland? Near the brain. That pituitary gland is a small gland near the brain producing the hormones, and that hormone or a number of hormones which the gland produces is carried by the blood till the thyroid, till the abdominal region, till the kidneys, and so many other parts of the body. So we are talking about the hormones. How come the hormones can travel long distances in the body and show their functions? Because hormones are always carried by blood. Are you understanding these points? So what is the first point I told you about endocrine glands? They produce chemical substances. What are those chemical substances known as? Hormones. Hormones are carried how? By ducts or by the blood? By the blood. The hormones are always carried by the blood. So that's the reason the hormones can travel long distances, unlike enzymes. Now, a major difference that we understand, that when we are talking about the characteristics of the hormones, or say the characteristics of the endocrine glands. What are some characteristics of the endocrine glands that we are going to understand? And the hormones also. Hormones, unlike the enzymes, they are produced in very, very small amounts. So what is one special feature of the hormones? They are produced in trace amounts, meaning they are produced in very, very small amounts. hormones are released in very, very small amounts. Now, for example, I will talk about one specific hormone to be produced only 0.5 milligrams. One particular hormone may be to be produced only 0.5 ml per 100 ml of the blood. Only this much. But sometimes if it is produced bit more, sometimes if it is produced bit less, is it going to cause any harm? Is it going to cause any harm? Yes. It will bring about a whole lot of disturbance in the body. So the first point that I talk about, if it is a hormone, hormones are produced in trace amounts, meaning there is a specific amount that the hormone has to be produced. If the hormone is produced much more than that or lesser than that, in both the ways, in both the conditions, we start suffering from certain abnormal conditions. What about an enzyme then? Someday we may come across that the type of food that we eat has been digested very effectively, not a problem at all. But in certain cases, in certain days, we come across that the same type of food may not show an efficient digestion. Meaning what? Some days, one particular type of an enzyme in our body is secreted too much, and in some day, the same amount or the same enzyme is secreted less than normal, maybe because of the environmental conditions or etc., the type of food. Does that cause a major harm in our body?
Ma'am, does the secretion of hormones is related to the weather?
No, not at all. The body type and the genes. The body type and the genes. So that is what I'm saying, that some days one particular type of an enzyme, salivary amylase, one day maybe a little bit more, little bit less. So digestion of the carbohydrate, the same 2 slices of bread, is it going to show the same efficiency of digestion all throughout 7 days a week, 30 days a month? Not necessarily. So digestion of carbohydrate, proteins, fats, etc. vary from time to time in our body. Why? The amount of the enzyme varies. Does that make us abnormal anyhow? No, not a problem at all. But what about the hormones? If the hormones are released in excess or in less quantity. So what is that condition known as? We would say both under secretion and over secretion, both under secretion and over secretion gives rise to abnormalities. Both this condition gives rise to abnormalities. That is one. Unlike enzymes. Let us talk about the second point. I already mentioned hormones are transported by blood. Hormones are, how are they carried? They are always transported by the bloodstream. They are always transported, carried from one part of the body to the next by the bloodstream. Next one, what type of functions do they carry? Just a while ago I asked you, what about the enzyme? What about the function? What do the enzymes do? They are known as the biocatalyst. What do they do? Break down complex substances to simple. Only that much is their function in our body. Did we ever come across any enzyme helping in the growth? Did we ever come across any enzyme helping in the entire process of maturation of our body? No. Maturation of the bones and the muscles, maturation of our brain, nothing the enzyme can do. So always we have to compare hormone with the enzymes because the chapter is about chemical and muscular co-ordination, all of it. So we are saying if it is an enzyme, it can only break down complex to simple. But if it is a hormone, what type of functions does the hormone show? The function of hormones. Functions include, what are the functions? Functions include maturation. Functions include development and growth. Functions include maturation, development and growth. So these are the major types of functions for the hormones that we understand. What is the chemical nature of enzymes? Enzymes are majorly all proteins in nature. What is the chemical nature of an enzyme? Whether you talk about pepsin or salivary amylase or pancreatic amylase or anything. All enzymes are proteins, meaning what? They are all made up of amino acids. What about the hormones? Hormones are not all made up of proteins. Some of them are fatty derivatives also. Some of them are derived from fatty acids also. So when we are talking about the chemical nature, 3-4 points about the hormones you are supposed to write, supposed to remember. Chemically, they are proteins. Chemically, they are proteins, or they may be amines or steroids. When we are talking about steroids, steroids here mean that they are the derivatives of fatty acids. And the next is, when we are talking about the hormones are always known as, yes, just now I said steroids are formed, or they are the breakdown products of fatty acids. Fatty acids, remember we had studied fats broken down to fatty acids in the intestine. So this carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen components, the compounds, they can further be broken down to form variety of compounds. Those will be termed as steroids. Understood? Next is, their actions are long term. So these 5 features about hormones, all of you will write this down. What are the major functions? What are the major features of hormones? Hormones are specific type of, chemically what are they? How do they travel in our body? What type of function do they perform in our body? And then when we are talking about the endocrine glands, why are they known as the ductless glands? So that also you should be able to understand. So this is the first introduction to come across endocrine glands. They are ductless glands. Why are they known as ductless glands? Write down. First you write down these 5 points, and after that we will answer this question. Why are endocrine glands known as ductless glands, and which are the 4 endocrine glands only you have in your syllabus? Endocrine. Endocrine. C-R-I-N-E. C-R-I-N-E. What are the 5 major features about endocrine glands you should know? Endocrine glands, what is chemically, what are they chemically? High secretion, low secretion, both can lead to some abnormalities. They are always carried by the blood. They don't have any ducts, or they are not carried by any tubes or ducts in our body. And what type of function do they carry out? Growth, maturation, all these. And any particular hormone remains in the blood for a long time. A particular hormone will remain in the blood for years to show its particular function. They are not generally released out from the body, excreted out from the body. Okay. Now, after you have written these 5 points, let us answer one question. Why are endocrine glands known as ductless glands? ये लिखा, features about hormones, all of you will write. Once you are done with that, next we will come to this question. Then we start with the organs.
Chemically, they are proteins.
Amines or steroids. Amines, A-M-I-N-E-S. Amines मतलब they are simpler. Proteins के simple form को बोलते हैं amines. They are not made up of complex amino acids. In any of your schools, they have finished with this chapter? Control coordination chapter start हुआ? हेरिडिटी खत्म हुआ? Yes. Okay.
पहला चैप्टर खत्म हो गया.
लाइफ प्रोसेस खत्म हुआ है, हेरिडिटी नहीं हुआ?
कंट्रोल कोऑर्डिनेशन
चल रहा है. What about the tests here? First test is over. Second test is over.
Yes.
हाँ कि ना?
Yes.
हाँ, कैसे किया? Are you appearing for the tests? How much marks you are getting?
Life process, but I got 40 and 11. And in this one also I got 11.
This one being coordination. Like heredity.
Not heredity, this may.
Our environment. Girls, किया attempt किया both the tests. Live process में 2 टेस्ट हुआ है. How much you got? Both the tests. Our environment very easy. Now the next test would be perhaps heredity, because heredity we have finished already. No? What is the next test?
Our environment was there. Now there is no test.
No test scheduled. Okay. How did you do?
In our environment I scored 15 and in life processes 11 and 14.
Live process revise karo. It's a big chapter. You should be able to answer all questions there. कितने? क्यों?
बायो में फुल है.
हाँ तो साइंस तो बायो का सिर्फ थोड़ी ना होता. Physics भी है, chemistry भी है. You focus on those. Practice करो. Write down the next question. Why are endocrine glands known as ductless glands? Write fast. Why are endocrine glands known as ductless glands? Why are endocrine glands known as ductless glands? Why are endocrine glands? Now, when we are talking about this, Samsa, write down why are endocrine glands known as ductless glands, right? Endocrine glands consist of cells. Very good. We'll start with this gland now. Let's start with this first gland. Endocrine glands consists of group of cells which secrete special chemical substances known as hormones. Group of cells which secrete special chemical substances known as hormones. Full stop. These hormones are diffused directly into the bloodstream and are not carried bloodstream, STREAM, bloodstream, and are not carried by any tubes, or ducts, hence these glands are known as endocrine glands. Ductless glands. Hence these glands are known as ductless glands. Now, as per your portion, we have to study 4 glands. If you see the textbook, the volume, which are the glands we are going to study? Endocrine glands. There are many endocrine glands. We are going to study 4 glands. Which are those glands? The first is the pituitary gland. The first gland is the pituitary gland. The second is the thyroid. The second is the thyroid gland. The third is the pancreas. The fourth is the adrenal. No, you have got 6, I think so. adrenal. The fifth is the both the gonads also there. The fifth is the testes in males, and sixth is the ovary in females. So these are the glands that we have to study. What are we studying here? The type of hormones. The parathyroid, pineal, all these are not there in your portion. Only the 6 glands are there in your portion. We have to study.
लेकिन स्कूल में हमने पढ़ा है उससे
क्या?
पैराथाइरॉइड और pineal.
पैराथाइरॉइड, पिनियल पढ़ाया है? But it's not there.
पैराथाइरॉइड 4 parts होते हैं.
Okay, I will teach. I have no issues, but parathyroid और pineal syllabus में नहीं है. So these are the 6 glands that we are going to come across. Hormones and functions and abnormal conditions only to study.
बोल रहा है